Greetings and welcome back. Here we're going to get into other kinds of editing, which includes grammar. I think you noticed in the syllabus about peer review and things, it was like never mention grammar and spelling mistakes. We are not our first drafts, and I think that that's one major thing to think about, that we're looking for ideas in those first moments. And if somebody's like, you use the same word like 6 times on this page, it's like, I'm not there yet. And that is exactly what happens to me in conversations when somebody says, oh my God, can I read your chapter draft? And I'm like, cool, I'm still working on ideas and rearranging things. And you know if somebody is a writer or not if they come back to you with like, I think you spelled blah, blah, blah wrong. Or like, you've used the same verb like 3 times in this paragraph. And you're like, what did I say about the stage that this writing was in? I don't revise, or I don't edit as I revise, because that whole page could go bye-bye any minute. So working through those things in order is why I have said absolutely no grammar spelling remarks on peer reviews. But here we are now. We've revised things. They're in the order we want. They've got a good flow. You've started to signpost and arrange. You're reducing those like useless words. And now let's talk about some top 10 grammar mistakes that I think happen often. I am using some terminology here that you can take notes for, but you don't have to like start talking like a grammar instructor. Those are there for you to be able to look up rules later. So if you put into Google, like, do I put a comma with a but in the sentence? Like, you're probably not going to get very good results. But if you do comma with conjunction rules, all of a sudden you'll get all the rules about when to use commas with conjunctions, and conjunctions include but. So let's go through sort of these top 10 big issues that you should be looking for in your writing once you're past the revision state and you're in stage edit. All right, incorrect use of I and me. I is the subjective case. That is the thing doing the stuff. Me is objective case. So like I, she, he, subjective. Me, her, him, objective. So me is something is being done to me, whereas I do the doing, subjective, objective. Okay. So, if we're reading that top set, and this is always that moment of like, but it's always, Michelle and I, depends, doesn't it? So read these sentences, and it was such a wonderful time for Michelle and I. It was such a wonderful time for Michelle and me. Are you just thinking about somebody going like, oh no, it's Michelle and I? Read the sentences without Michelle and then you will know whether or not you're using the appropriate pronoun. So it was such a wonderful time for I. It was such a wonderful time for me. You are the objective there, right? Something, the time for me. It is the subject right here. So, Michelle and me is correct for that first duo there. So, me and Michelle had a great time. Michelle and I had a great time. Read it without the Michelle ands. So, me had a great time. I had a great time. I, because it's the subjective this time, right? Just between you and me, or just between you and I? It's a hard one because you can't be like, just between me, just between I. But you guessed it, maybe. Just between you and me. Yep. All right, let's move on to number 2, subject pronoun agreement. Person, singular. If a person has a complaint, he or she should contact Human Resources Department. If a person has a complaint, they should contact the Human Resource. A person is not they. So the top one is correct, but it's often not what you're going to see. But he or she is a bit tedious, and it's really kind of not where social grammar is going these days, especially when people have preferred pronouns and he or she may not cover them. They, them have now become perfectly acceptable singular pronouns. So when you're talking about people, then you need to maybe lean more towards this number of singular versus plural disagreement, because they works perfectly well for any person. So if a person has a complaint, they should contact the Human Resources Department. So this one's kind of a trick one, because being grammatically incorrect is actually grammatically correct these days. However, you do need to keep in mind number. So if you are talking about these authors complain, because you're talking about 2 or 3 or 10 or 100 authors, you need to make sure that the plural goes with your subject's number, basically. This paper cites, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, actually there was more than that. So then you would have to do these papers cite, not cites. So keeping that pronoun, especially like it or those or them, agreement. So make sure that you're keeping the numbers right. Plural with plural, singular with singular. And sometimes when you're messing with general concepts, you might change one and then not change the other until you get to this stage in editing, which is totally fine, but you need to catch it now. All right, so gender exclusive language. This one is getting different. And I would say this video will probably age every 6 months from now on, and we should check with what's happening. If one has a complaint, one should contact the Human Resources Department. If a person has a complaint, he should contact the Human Resources Department, or she, that parentheses thing, people tried it out about 15 years ago. It never caught on. ZHE was one that was attempted. Doesn't work. Now they has become a perfectly acceptable singular way to address a pronoun. So if a person has a complaint, they should contact the Human Resources Department is now grammatically acceptable. That may change again in the future, because a few years ago that was not grammatically acceptable, because they is plural. If people have complaints, they should contact. But if a person has a complaint, now because of the use of they, them pronouns for one singular individual, that is more correct right now. For me, just to sort of recognize that I am not commenting on gender preferred pronouns, I use one wherever I possibly can. It may sound a little bit more formal, but if one has a complaint, one should contact the Human Resources Department. That is grammatically correct. It keeps your numbers the same, 1 and 1, literally. It's not sort of weighing in on the pronoun situation. Sometimes it's far more appropriate for you to weigh in on the pronoun situation, but if I'm talking about something sort of, I don't know, I mean, human resources is different from science, but if I'm talking about any generalized person, I go with 1. Again, check in with what the latest is on grammar as we go. All right, apostrophes. Possession and contraction are the 2 reasons you would have apostrophes. Okay, the top one of that is my aunt's house versus the middle one, that is my aunt's house. The house belongs to your aunt. Okay, the third one, that is my aunt's house. If you had multiple aunts and they lived together in that house, then it would be S apostrophe. So in this case, we're looking at the apostrophe S is possession. It shows ownership or possession of. So that is my aunt's house. Apostrophe S is one. Aunts is plural and then the apostrophe. In some cases, some people do the S apostrophe S. I think that looks weird. I don't know if it's because I went to school in Britain and I have a confused which one's British English and which one's American English, because they both look right to me, whereas S apostrophe S doesn't ever look right to me. But S apostrophe is plural possessive. So if you've got a couple aunts and they all live in that house over there, then it is your aunt's S apostrophe's house. The top one without an apostrophe is not grammatically correct to say anything. The biggest one that I think is an issue that you will probably not catch while you're writing is its, ITS. So one of them is correct and the other one is correct. It just depends on what you're trying to do. For this apostrophe is not possession, it is contraction. So IT apostrophe S is it is. Okay, so if you are reading and you see an apostrophe it's, IT apostrophe S, just read it as it is. And it's also probably, if you're writing a research paper or something, you should put it is. And then you should probably go in and see if there's a better verb for is and make a better, more active, vigorous sentence. But if we're here and we're copy editing for grammar and we are going to use is, and we are going to use the super vague pronoun of it, and you've got IT apostrophe S, just read it as it is and see if the sentence still makes sense. So, the snake shed it is skin. Nope, it's the it's possessive. So, the snake shed its skin without the apostrophe is correct, right? Interesting to watch a snake shed its skin. Perfect. All right. Nope. The shed its skin, we've established it is not. But it is interesting to watch a snake shed its skin. So that first it's needs to have the apostrophe, like we see here in the middle one. At our store, our customers' needs come first. It is the needs of the customer. They possess those needs, so we need a possessive apostrophe. At our store, our customers' needs come first. If you only had one customer and that was the only one you cared about, then it would be customer apostrophe S. If you would like to have more than one customer, which is probably your best move as a business if you want to make money, then you have customers, plural, and all of their needs, so customer S apostrophe, come first. All right, so that is your apostrophe check. Misuse of commas. This is a joke that I think kids enjoy, and I always think about it. The giant panda eats, shoots, and leaves. The giant panda eats, shoots, and leaves. The first one is describing the diet of a panda. They eat bamboo, shoots, and leaves. The second one describes a panda who consumed a meal, discharged a firearm, and exited the premises. Commas are important. I'm going to do a separate, 1-minute video on the Oxford comma. We will get there. I was tired, but I kept working until the project was done. I was tired. I kept working until the project was done. You can separate ideas or items with a comma, but comma splicing, where you have two independent clauses, which means they both could be sentences by themselves, you can put them, the top one works because you used a conjunction. So, I was tired. You've got a subject and a predicate. That's a whole sentence, right? I kept working until the project was done. That was a whole sentence. You would need something in the middle there, okay? You can use the conjunction. So, I was tired, but I kept working until the project was done. If you say, I was tired, I kept working until the project was done, but you don't want to make them two separate sentences, you can't use a comma. It's not strong enough to hold together two whole sentences. So you're going to want a semicolon there, or a period and just make two short sentences, which is also known as Better writing, right? All right. Boom. Number 6. Dangling modifiers. Endless fun in Grammarland. After being lost for years, John Smith discovered the crown jewels hidden behind a staircase. Well, where was John all that time? A modifier, so the after being lost for years, it modifies the next geographically close noun. So after being lost for years, John Smith was the one who was lost for years. Okay, so if you wanted to keep the semi-dramatic after being lost for years, you would have to say, comma, the crown jewels were discovered hidden behind a staircase by John Smith. Not as good. So maybe John Smith discovered the crown jewels behind a staircase after being lost for years. I mean, the staircase was lost for years then. Just get rid of the modifier. Fix it. But you just said John Smith was lost for years. Polished smooth by thousands of years of wave action. Jane Doe picked up a speckled rock. Well, Jane looks great for being able to bend over after thousands of years of wave action. So remember that the modifier modifies the next geographically available noun in the sentence. So both of these are like, ha ha, John Smith was lost. Ha ha, Jane Doe was 1,000 years old. They're not good sentences. I know that people know what you meant, but this is grammatically incorrect, and it leads to muddled things where you were actually wrong about what you were modifying, and now someone else has to sort of figure it out for you and be like, oh, I'm sure they meant blah, blah, blah. That's not clear writing, right? The whole point of communication is clarity. Say exactly what you mean. So if you misuse modifiers like that, you're making it more difficult to understand what you mean. And we want to avoid that. All right. So number 7, ironic. Most people use the word ironic when they mean coincidental. Irony is using a word to sort of mean the opposite of their dictionary definition. It does not mean like a negative situation. So Alanis Morissette, I know that maybe you are too young to remember Isn't It Ironic? But I'm pretty sure if you YouTube it, you'll get it. Rain on your wedding day is an unfortunate coincidence. It is not ironic. Let's see. What do we have here? The team will play the next game in Toronto, which ironically is where the coach began his career 25 years ago. There's something ironic about that. That's coincidentally. So, it's a coincidence. So the team will play its next game in Toronto, which coincidentally is where the coach began. A coincidence is like, oh, well, I'm also from there. What are the odds? It's a coincidence. I'm waiting for a bathroom in Greece, and I assume like the girl in front of me is Greek, so I like apologize for like standing too close to her in Greek. And she turns around and she's like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Greek. And she said it with a super North Dakota accent. And I was like, where are you from? She's like, Bismarck. I'm from Minot. And it was such a coincidence that we're both standing in a random Greek village one summer waiting for a bathroom. North Dakota does not have that many people. So quite the coincidence that we saw each other in Greece. Was it irony? No. Okay, so irony. Irony is like when something actually ends up meaning not exactly what it meant, but then it really meant it. Okay, so for example, like the fire station burnt down. That's ironic because it's a fire station, but it's a station on fire. So you're like, oh, the irony. Swift recommends a diet rich in baby food. So Jonathan Swift, D'Amato's proposal. It's like an inside joke. Anyway, which is not the same as an oxymoron. Like jumbo shrimp, that's an oxymoron. No, because that's the sort of two opposite words being used next to each other. But kind of that dictionary definition of a fire station is a station in which firefighters exist, not a station that is on fire. So the fire station burnt down. That is ironic. All right. Let's move on to misspelled words. I mean, Microsoft Word might help you out here. It might not. But in general, these are the things you need to look for most to ensure that your credibility like stays strong. Like if you misspell the author's name or the major time period or the key word that you're talking about here, then I like know you haven't read that much about it because you don't even know how to spell the word, right? So if you're trying to talk about how you know everything about Jonathan Swift's stuff, but you call him James Swift or Jonathan Smith, that could have been an autocorrect moment, and that would be unfortunate, but you need to be able to catch it. So you probably didn't read much of Jonathan Swift's work if you think his name is Jonathan Smith, right? So main characters, if you're talking about literary stuff, I had a friend who was trying to write something in a lit class, and she was using Gwyneth Paltrow as her like perfect example of an Ophelia, and she misspelled Gwyneth, and she could have looked that up. And her professor just wrote back and was like, well, it wasn't a very Gwyneth thing for you to do to misspell Gwyneth's name. And I was like, oh, epic fail. The proper nouns, the places, the names of the authors, the key terms that you're using. If you're trying to convince me that you're well-read and an expert on this thing to be talking about or arguing about it, then you need to at least know how to spell it, okay? So it's kind of a big fumble if you sort of haven't demonstrated your not only knowledge of being well-read on that topic, but like commitment to giving me facts and accuracy. So am I supposed to believe your numbers if you've typo misspelled a bunch of stuff? How do I know that you typo misnumbered something? And then when you're like 75% of people die before the age of 30, and I'm like, what? You might have meant 17. But if you misspelled a bunch of words before that, I'm going to believe that you didn't know, right? So misspelled words just mean that you aren't being careful. And that means that maybe you're not being careful in the rest of the process too, and that we shouldn't believe anything you say. Okay. Homonyms, words that sound like other words, right? This one, I think, could have, should have, would have is something that let's just get this one off the table. This again is one of those, you're used to people saying it, so you hear it. You're not used to seeing it in writing. And that kind of just sort of proves these little things that you've heard more than you've read, and that you're perhaps not as well read as you think you are, versus things like people who read and then never use words out loud and they mispronounce them, and you're like, did you mean? And then you realize they probably are very good readers and they just don't talk in that sort of register of vocabulary often enough. So they've never heard the word out loud. All right, so could have, should have, would have. It is could have. I could have gone somewhere. I should have gone somewhere. I would have gone somewhere, not could of. So if you're saying something and then you write and then they should of, it is not of, it is should have, okay? What you're hearing verbally is a contraction. Should apostrophe VE is the contraction of should have becomes should have. So it sounds like should of, but it's should have VE, okay? So you're listening to the contraction and it sounds like should of, but it is not. It is should have. All right, so let's walk through this, because if you have somebody where you're like, oh, I didn't blah, 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 and they write like coulda, shoulda, woulda, and you're like, no, none of those things. Sit down. All right, so let's look at what these do. So number one, I could have gone to the park, but I had a lot of work to do. So no, could means that you were able to, but the second half tells us that you were not able to. You made a choice, so you would have gone to the park, but you had a lot of work to do. So you made a choice, okay? So I should have gone to the gym, but I have a lot of work to do. So just like would have, I would have gone to the gym, but I have a lot of work to do. That is more correct if you mean that I had a choice and I made the right one, right? I would have gone to the gym. I hear you, but I had a lot of work to do. Okay, I should have gone to the gym, but I had a lot of work to do means that I made the choice and I regret my choice. So when you say you should have done something, it means that you made a different choice and you regret it, okay? So I could have, but is that sort of ability, inability? So we have the I would have gone to the gym, but I have a lot of work to do, right? All right, so if we have this, I don't know, the excuse for students of like, I would have done my work, but Raiders of the Lost Ark was on TV. You just told me that you had a choice between the work and Raiders of the Lost Ark. You chose Raiders of the Lost Ark. No regrets. If you're trying to be like, I'm real sorry, then you need to tell me that you made the wrong choice. So you should say, I should have done my work, but Raiders of the Lost Ark was on, and I'm weak for, you know, those vintage thrillers about archaeology. So that is what you are implying, okay? Would have is without remorse. I had choices, I made one. Should have is with regret. I had choices and I'm sorry about the one I made. All right, so I think that that is a good example of something that is often misused and misunderstood in the work, and that will help clarify. All right, let's look at there and your. All right, so spell check isn't going to catch these because they are all correct words, just they all mean different things. So they're going to put their stuff over there. All three theirs in that one sentence. The first one, THEY'(R)E, is a contraction of they are. Going to put their stuff. THEIR is possessive. So that's mine. No, that's theirs. All right, so their stuff is the possessive, and then over there, THERE is a geographic location, right? It's a place over there. All right, so you're doing lots of good things with your money. The your and your. Why? Again, the apostrophe RE is a contraction of you are. You are doing lots of good things with, and then your money, YOUR, is possessive. My money, your money, their money. So make sure that if you're reading anything with an apostrophe, check to see if it's a contraction, and in general, you're formalizing your language if you just type out you are, they are. Don't use those contractions in more formal writing, and then you won't have the issue of using the wrong there and your. All right, so bonus round, just to prove that I am not like a blind grammar monkey. I'm going to talk about 2 grammar mistakes that I don't really think are mistakes, and I use them all the time, and you just need to like know that you're making a mistake and know that you're just being fancier than the rules. Split infinitive. Technically, any infinitive form is the to blank, like to go, to do, to see, to hunt. So that's the infinitive form. And in general, you don't put anything between the infinitives. We decided that, I'm pretty sure, because in Latin, you don't. But in Latin, the infinitive form is one word, so you can't. And so it has become this sort of no other language puts words in between their infinitives, but most other languages, the infinitive form is just one word, whereas our infinitive word form is 2. And if you can, should you, Sometimes the answer is just because you can, maybe you shouldn't, but other times, look at this example that many know well: to boldly go where no man has gone before. The great motto of the USS Enterprise is a split infinitive. It's wrong, okay? But if we fixed it, you would get to go boldly where no man has gone before. Boldly to go where no man has gone before. Neither of them really like have the oomph. So to boldly go is a split infinitive. That's what that looks like. To and go are the infinitive form of that verb. You put something in between, but you put something kind of cool in between. And I know that it's an adverb, and I told you to get rid of those in our last editing workshop, but you got to make sure that they're there for a reason. And to go where no man has gone before just doesn't really capture the essence of what you're doing. That exploration is to boldly go. So you've 2 grammar mistakes in one sentence that has become a very famous sentence and is kind of worth the grammar mistake. So if you're splitting infinitives left, right, and sideways, then it looks like you don't know that that's a rule and you should stop. If you don't split infinitives, except you make one exception because it's just got this poetic oomph, then go for it. All right, so ending sentences with a preposition. I don't know if you've been told never to end a sentence with a preposition, but I think sometimes it just makes things clearer. My mom makes fun of me because I sound very, quote, North Dakota. She's from New Jersey, so she has her own grammar tics. And when you're like, this is something I will not put up with. With is, you know, a preposition. So like with shouldn't end a sentence, right? This is something I won't put up with is grammatically incorrect, but everybody knows what you mean, right? We're talking about clarity. And Winston Churchill, who got all of his prepositions taken out by an editor, wrote back with, "This is a situation up with which I shall not put." He's like, I'm not going to put up with that. Like, this is something I'm not going to put up with. I mean, with what? I'm not going to put up with this situation. You may be able to get there. But in general, sometimes ending a sentence with a preposition, especially if it's one of those very common use ones, make sure it's not a cliche. But sometimes, like, this is something I will not put up with is a much clearer sentence than this is a situation up with which I shall not put. It's just a bit silly. So again, just like getting rid of every to be verb, is, are, was, can sometimes make you do just ridiculous gymnastics where the sentence is not better because it's not clearer, because sometimes something just is. But in general, if you can use more vigorous language, if you can be more clear, if you can end a sentence without a preposition, try to do that correctly. But sometimes it just works because we're used to doing it in our language so often. All right, that's my grammar lecture for today.